Have you ever felt like being right with God is this impossible climb? Like you're constantly striving, trying to be good enough, but you never quite feel like you've arrived? Well, the Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Romans, has some absolutely bombshell news for us. He says that righteousness, being right with God, isn't about climbing at all. In fact, it's about something so much closer, something you can receive right here, right now. Let's dive in. This is probably the most fundamental question of the human heart, isn't it? How can I be right with God? We've built entire civilizations, religions, and philosophies trying to answer it. But what if the answer isn't nearly as complicated as we've made it out to be? Paul is about to cut through all that noise with a simple, profound truth. So, Paul starts by showing us a fork in the road. He presents two different paths, two completely different ways of thinking that both claim to lead to righteousness. Let's take a look at what these two paths have to say. Paul does something really brilliant here. He actually gives these two paths a voice. The first one, the law-based path, says, and he's quoting Leviticus, "The one who does these things will live by them." You hear that? It's all about your performance. The burden is completely on you. But then, this other voice, the voice of faith, whispers something totally different. It says, the word is near you. It's not about what you do, but about what God has already done. And this is where it gets really interesting. The voice of faith then says, stop. Seriously, just stop the frantic striving. Stop trying to undertake these impossible journeys you think you need to go on. Because guess what? They've already been completed for you. So faith says, do not say in your heart, who will ascend into heaven? You don't have to claw your way up there. It's not about building your own tower to God through good works or religious performance. Paul, quoting from Deuteronomy, is saying that trying to achieve righteousness that way is like trying to literally pull Christ down from the sky. It's an impossible quest. And it's not just about reaching up. Faith also says, or who will descend into the deep? In other words, stop trying to conquer the grave on your own power. You can't achieve your own resurrection. Both of these exhausting human efforts, climbing to heaven and defeating death, are complete dead ends for us. So why does faith command us to stop all this striving? Well, because the journey is already over. And this right here, this is the most crucial, game-changing point in this entire passage. Here it is, the beautiful, simple truth. The work is finished. You don't need to go on an epic quest to bring Christ down from heaven because he's already come. And you don't need to try and raise him from the dead because he is already risen. God has done the impossible for us. This is the gospel in a nutshell. Christ descended through his incarnation. He brought the very righteousness of heaven down to earth, right to our doorstep. And then he ascended through his resurrection, securing a final total victory over sin and death forever. So get this, faith doesn't activate our salvation. It simply receives the salvation that God has already and completely finished in Christ. Okay, so if righteousness isn't way up in the heavens for us to climb to, and it's not down in the deep for us to search for, then where in the world is it? Paul's answer is absolutely stunning in its simplicity and its intimacy. The word is near you. Just let that sink in for a second. Righteousness isn't some far-off prize you have to earn. It's here, right now. It's not distant, it's near. But just how near is it really? Well, for one, it's in your mouth. This points to the external, public, spoken confession of the good news. It's the word that we actually say out loud and share it with others. And just as importantly, it is in your heart. This is the internal, personal trust in the truth of that word. It's that deep down, settled belief in the finished work of Jesus Christ. Paul brings these two ideas together perfectly in Romans chapter 10, verse 9. He shows that they're really two sides of the same coin of saving faith. It starts with an internal trust. You believe in your heart that God raising Jesus from the dead is a historical fact and our ultimate victory. And that internal belief naturally leads to an external allegiance. You confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. Now, we have to understand in the first century Roman world, saying Jesus is Lord was not some casual religious phrase. It was political dynamite. It was a radical and honestly a dangerous declaration. It was saying point blank, Caesar is not the ultimate authority here. It was a total reorientation of your entire life, your loyalty, your allegiance, all of it around the supreme reign of King Jesus. So you might be thinking, okay, if salvation is this accessible, this near, then why doesn't everyone believe? That's the critical question Paul turns to next. And he locates the problem, the crisis point, not in God's ability to save, but in our ability to truly hear. So how does this faith actually come about? Paul is crystal clear. Faith comes from hearing. And what do we need to hear? We need to hear the word of Christ, the message of the gospel. This is so important. It means God's sovereign plan to save people works through the act of proclamation. It's not an optional extra. It's the very method God has chosen to create faith in human hearts. So, at the end of the day, the problem isn't a lack of access to the information. For the people of Israel that Paul was writing about, the message had been proclaimed loud and clear. The real issue was a refusal to submit, a refusal to receive the gift of righteousness that God was freely offering. And Paul ends this section with this incredibly moving picture from the prophet Isaiah, spoken from God's own heart. All day long, I have held out my hands. Can you see that? This isn't a picture of an angry, distant God. It's a picture of a loving, patient Father with his arms open wide, constantly inviting, even in the face of our stubbornness. And so this entire powerful journey through Romans 10, from the impossible human quests to the nearness of the Word, it brings every single one of us to a final, personal point of decision. What Romans 10 does is fundamentally change the question we're asking. The old question, the one born from human effort, is always, can I do enough? Can I reach righteousness? But the gospel flips the script entirely. The new question, born of God's amazing grace, is simply, since Christ has brought righteousness to me, will I receive him? So the incredible news of Romans 10 is this. Christ is not far away. He's not at the top of an unclimbable mountain or at the bottom of an unreachable sea. He has come down. He has risen up. And right now, he is as near to you as the breath in your lungs. The work is done. The journey is finished. The only question left is, will you receive him?